He lounged on the couch, the weight of his own ambitions pressing heavily on his chest. Around him, the room was a mess: papers, notebooks, and half-finished plans scattered across a cluttered desk. He had dreams that reached far beyond the four walls of his apartment, visions of success, recognition, and achievement. Yet here he sat, immobilized by the invisible chains of laziness. He stared at the chaos with a mix of frustration and guilt. A small voice whispering constantly, "I should be doing something. I could be accomplishing something." But another, stronger voice countered, softer and almost seductive, saying, "Maybe later. Tomorrow. Just relax." Time seemed suspended in that space between desire and action. His mind jumped from one thought to another, making elaborate plans, imagining glorious outcomes, yet no tangible step forward emerged. He understood the paradox clearly. He wanted success, yet he refused the work it required. It was an inner battle, one he fought daily, feeling both the spark of ambition and the pull of inertia. In that moment, feeling trapped in his own indecision, he felt an almost imperceptible shift. A calmness settled over his racing thoughts, a new presence entering the room, not physically, but in a way that tugged at the edges of his imagination. A figure appeared in the shadows of his mind, a samurai. At first, he thought it was just his imagination playing tricks on him, but the presence was unmistakable, composed and silent. The samurai held a katana, its blade gleaming faintly with a soft light that seemed to pulse with purpose. The figure exuded a sense of discipline and calm mastery, not through aggression, but through balance, focus, and deliberate action. The young man watched in awe as the samurai took a slow, measured step forward, the movement precise, unhurried, yet undeniably powerful. The lesson, though unspoken, was clear. Greatness was not achieved in leaps of frenzied effort, but in consistent, mindful steps. The samurai's eyes, sharp yet serene, seemed to look directly into his hesitation, as if peeling back the layers of excuse and fear that had kept him stagnant. He felt a mixture of fear and fascination, a strange clarity washing over him. The figure gestured gently, pointing first to the clutter around him, then to the scattered notebooks and half-started projects. In that gesture, he saw a simple truth. The path forward was not through giant leaps or overwhelming tasks, but through small, deliberate, action-steady improvements, repeated consistently over time. This was the essence of Kaizen, a philosophy he had heard of, but never truly understood until this moment. His gaze fell back to the desk, the same desk that had once intimidated him, now reframed in his mind's eye. Each scattered notebook, each half-written plan, became an opportunity, a small stepping stone. He imagined himself picking up just one notebook, opening it, and writing a single line. The thought seemed almost trivial, but the samurai nodded approvingly in his mind, a subtle acknowledgement of the power in this modest act. Suddenly, the immense task of achieving his ambitions did not feel insurmountable. It was no longer a giant mountain to climb in one impossible leap, but a series of manageable stones, each one reachable with intent and focus. A gentle warmth spread through him, an unexpected sense of encouragement, as though the samurai's calm presence had transferred strength into his own body. He felt a stirring of energy he hadn't experienced in months, a willingness to move, however slightly, toward what he truly wanted. For the first time, he understood that ambition alone was not enough. Ambition needed direction, structure, and a method to turn thought into action. The Kaizen approach, this idea of gradual improvement, suddenly made perfect sense. It was not flashy, it was not dramatic, but it was enduring and powerful. He shifted on the couch, feeling a subtle sense of readiness. His fingers itched for paper and pen, for the act of putting intention into motion. The samurai, still a shadowy presence, seemed to smile faintly, as if granting permission to take that first, simple step. He picked up a notebook, the weight of it solid and grounding in his hands. He opened it, heart racing slightly, and wrote a single line. One line, that was all. But in that small act, he felt a ripple of momentum. The lotus of focus that had been dormant within him seemed to awaken. The enormity of his ambitions no longer paralyzed him. Instead, they became a series of attainable moves, each one reinforcing his capacity to progress. In that quiet moment, he realized something profound. The key to success was not to fight laziness with force, but to guide action through small, intentional steps. Ambition and laziness could coexist, but only if one learned the rhythm of Kaizen, the steady, unrelenting march of improvement. The samurai in his mind remained a silent mentor, a living reminder that greatness was not born in leaps, but in the patience, discipline, and courage to begin. And with that understanding, he finally felt ready to stand, to act, and to honor the ambitions that had long been trapped in the shadows of inertia. After taking that first simple action, a quiet shift began to settle over him. The initial hesitation that had gripped him for so long now seemed almost distant, like a shadow fading in the morning light. He sat at his desk, the notebook open in front of him, the pen poised for the next line. The samurai from his imagination lingered still, a calm, unwavering presence that seemed to watch and guide without judgment. He realized that he didn't need to tackle the entire mountain of tasks at once. Each tiny step, each modest action, had the power to build momentum and cultivate discipline. And that insight alone was enough to ignite a new determination. He wrote another line, then another. Each word felt lighter than the last, each movement less burdened by doubt. The scattered papers and cluttered notebooks that had once overwhelmed him now seemed manageable. Like individual tiles forming a mosaic, he could arrange one piece at a time. With each completed action, he felt a quiet energy growing within him. A sense of progress that didn't depend on dramatic leaps or overnight success, but on persistent, deliberate effort. The samurai's presence seemed to glow slightly brighter in his mind, a reflection of his growing confidence and focus. As he continued, time seemed to stretch and bend. He paused briefly to take a deep breath, feeling the rhythm of his own focus. The samurai remained in the periphery of his thoughts, silent but commanding. A reminder that discipline is not about harsh self-criticism, but about guiding the mind steadily toward achievement. He noticed that each small act built upon the previous one, creating a chain of success that grew stronger with every deliberate move. The initial fear and inertia that had kept him trapped in laziness now seemed almost alien, replaced by a quiet joy in productivity. The act of doing, no matter how small, was reshaping his mental landscape. Hours passed, marked not by frantic effort, but by calm, consistent action. His desk, once a chaotic mess, became increasingly organized, each paper and notebook finding its place. He realized that productivity was not a matter of heroics, but of methodical, continuous steps. The samurai's silent guidance underscored the importance of patience, of trusting the process rather than seeking instant results. Every small achievement made the lotus of focus in his mind bloom a little brighter, illuminating the path toward his ambitions and reminding him that progress, however incremental, was still progress. With each completed task, he felt a growing sense of mastery over his own mind. The laziness that had once seemed like an unbreakable chain had weakened, replaced by a self-discipline that felt surprisingly natural. He began to see patterns in his work, understanding how even the smallest steps could accumulate into significant outcomes over time. His thoughts were clearer, sharper, more organized. The samurai's presence, once a shadowy guide, now felt like an extension of his own will, a symbol of the discipline and focus he had cultivated. By the late afternoon, he had transformed not just his workspace, but his mindset. The mountain of ambition that had seemed overwhelming earlier now lay before him as a series of manageable tasks, each within reach if he applied steady, deliberate effort. The Kaizen method had proven itself not as theory, but as practice-on approach to life that allowed even the laziest of dreamers to make tangible progress toward their goals. He leaned back in his chair, taking a deep breath, feeling a sense of quiet triumph, not because he had completed every task, but because he had begun, and in that beginning, he had discovered the path forward. The samurai slowly faded from his imagination, leaving behind a lasting impression. Success is not about grand gestures or sudden bursts of energy, but about the patience, persistence, and courage to take one step at a time. He smiled, recognizing that ambition and laziness could coexist, but only if approached with mindfulness and method. Each small action, each incremental improvement, was a building block for a life of achievement and purpose. The lesson of the samurai, the quiet power of Kaizen, had transformed not just his day, but his perspective, offering a path from procrastination to accomplishment that could be followed again and again. By evening, the work that had once seemed impossible was well underway, completed in part but no longer overwhelming. He had discovered a truth that would guide him far beyond this single day, that success does not demand perfection, only consistent effort, deliberate action, and the courage to begin, no matter how small the step. And in that understanding, he felt a sense of empowerment that would carry him toward all the ambitions he had once feared were beyond reach.